practice in this way in this beautiful hall on this beautiful Sunday. And I was reflecting that, you know, nobody needs to come. Nobody could come. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine, a very sincere and diligent practitioner who was in a student teaching program to get certified as a meditation teacher. And so he's offering classes and teaching classes, and he offered a class and went, and there was a single body in the room with him. And it was, you know, I know that feeling. And so a single person took him up on that invitation to insight, and that's still beautiful. And the two of them got to benefit, got to partake, got to participate in this beautiful, ennobling practice of simply noticing what's already always occurring right here and right now. So I feel so honored that so many people have come and accepted Long Beach Meditation's invitation. So thank you very kindly. And also, really, truly speaking, you accepted your own invitation. You accepted this invitation to come and see deeply into your experience, to take this invitation to insight and notice what's right here, right now. And as always, the hardest thing to see is what's right in front of us in every sphere of life, especially when dealing with something as subtle as our own awareness. Does anyone in the room, anyone else besides me, have books or movies or shows or stories that they go back to again and again? I mean, who even knows how many times, whatever that is for you. Me too. And for me, it's very often Dharma talks by my teachers and people who I consider my teachers who have never met me. But in my heart, they're my teacher. So I was listening to one of these talks that is like a friend and a mentor to me. And this is a talk given by my teacher, James Lowe. He's a Dzogchen teacher in London. And he used this term, invitation to anxiety. And it was like a sour note in a piece of music or something bitter in a dessert. And I was like, ooh. And he was talking about a certain way of holding and meeting our experience, and especially our Dharma practice, a certain way of coming to practice. So I was reflecting on that term, invitation to anxiety, and I decided that maybe the opposite orientation would be something like invitation to insight. So I was thinking about this polarity. Insight, briefly, is the English word that is most often how we translate the Pali word vipassana. And so, I mean, even, the insight meditation tradition has its own, trademarked name, Insight LA, Insight Long Beach. And the etymology of this word is really beautiful. Pasana, pasha, means to see or seeing. And when you add the prefix V, it's an intensifying word. It means deeply or differently or clearly. So this vipassana is seeing clearly or seeing deeply into something or someone in a penetrating and powerful way. It also indicates the actual insights that one gains by vipassana. The Buddha would talk about when we sit, we get this opportunity to look into what's going on for us, the way a person might hold a sack and reach their hand in and touch the various objects in the sack. Oh, that's a coin. That's that pretty pebble I like. That's my sweet that I saved for later. You touch and know, I know what that is. This vipassana is not a dry and distant intellectualizing. It's curious and open, which really is its specific quality. So, how do we know that we have taken the invitation to insight instead of the invitation to anxiety? The easiest thing would just be to note how you are feeling. What's arising for you? The essential nature of insight or vipassana, or talking about the term that the Buddha used in the Satipatthana Sutta, sati sampajana, which means attending to, paying attention to, in a very tender way, closely. That's the word sati, what we translate as mindfulness. And then sampajana, clearly knowing, without judgment, without critique, without chatter. When you have taken the invitation to insight in a given moment, it's open and curious. It's spacious. Oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? And every moment could be seen as an invitation to insight or an invitation to anxiety. And anxiety in me feels the opposite. Anxiety feels contracted, constricted, and high stakes. There's something going on more than just, oh, what's this? There's some clinging going on, some grasping, something to protect, something to prop up. Like today, practicing for this talk, I had a fair amount of anxiety around this talk. And it's a very familiar condition for me. Why? Because I want to do a good job. I want to earn my keep. I want to make my teachers proud, and I want to be of service. And on one hand, if I'm open and curious around this is a really valuable invitation to do a good job, to work hard, to be diligent. And the shadow of that, of course, is the anxiety, tying myself in knots. And then coming here, and instead of being open and spacious and like, well, I've done my best, it's like, oh my God, what are they thinking? So, I release you from having to prop up my fragile ego after class. I'm just going to do my best and we'll shake it out. See what happens. This kind of seeming binary, this kind of seeming duality between being open and curious versus constricted and tight. This is every moment, every waking moment, every dreaming moment, actually, also. And the moment doesn't change. This is this incredible insight that the Buddha and all those teachers and students after the Blessed One had. The moment doesn't change. I change. The way I am present to this experience changes. This object doesn't change based on my preferences or opinions. It is the way it is, the way all things are. Existing purely in the clarity and specificity of how it arises. A product of causes and conditions, too many to count, going backward into infinity. That too. That siren is an invitation to insight, to loving kindness. When I hear a siren, I think, may whomever that siren is made for be safe and happy. May whoever is operating that siren be guided by kindness and wisdom. Everything that arises in your experience can be an invitation to insight or an invitation to anxiety. So, see if this resonates with you. Humans generally have a kind of basic intuition that things could be better. Things could be improved. Maybe there's something wrong or missing, and very often that's true. Even just on the level of basic household chores, there's probably a better way to get a stubborn stain out of a white shirt. I just recently learned a better way to caramelize onions. Caramelizing onions is a big thing in our house. It's a serious thing. A lot of cooking going on in my house, a lot of eating. If you've met my sons, they're twice my size. Very important. So life actually does demand a certain amount of ongoing maintenance, right? You have to eat every day, you have to wash your clothes, you have to wash your dishes, you have to sweep your floors, and it invites and rewards a certain amount of attention and skillfulness. The feeling of climbing into a bed of clean sheets at the end of the day. That's beautiful, that's wonderful, how exquisite, and only because you noticed, time to wash my sheets, time to make my bed, and then that wonderful experience. Now we live in most of us here are probably have enough to eat, have a place to live that's relatively secure. Even so, most of our human lives are spent trying to meet our basic survival needs. And once those are met, food, shelter, clothing, then we usually move on, right? We move on to our psychological needs, our emotional needs. This is that classic hierarchy of needs that we learned in first year psychology class. Once we are lucky enough to have all these needs met, we very often move into a self-improvement. If you're starving, you're not worrying about, maybe my interpersonal relationships could use a little work. We take care of the really crucial things first, right? And then we move on. We embark on a self-improvement project. Maybe we even want to improve our spouses. Good luck. Or our friends or partners. This can be dicey. Not recommended. In the words of the Reverend Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, more connection, less correction. There's a whole 10 years of Dharma talks in that. It's amazing to me personally how often I see a stranger on the subject of improvement or improving myself or others. It's amazing how much time I have on my hands to notice a stranger doing something, minding their own business. And I'm like, that's not the way to do that. I should go tell them. I'm now 50, I've learned that most strangers don't want to hear my very important insights into how to improve their lives. So I went to school for music. You've probably heard some version of this joke, but I went to school for music. I was a percussionist, and so the joke runs like this, as it was given to me. Thus have I heard. How many drummers does it take to change a light bulb? At least 3. 1 to do it perfectly fine, and 2 to stand around and go, oh my God, this guy. That's not how you do that. You don't go, you go, anyway. So, this happens in the spiritual arena as well. The case can very easily be made that in the majority of the religious traditions of the world, we have this general starting point of there's a problem, there's a dilemma, there's an issue, something needs fixing, something needs our attention. This is, maybe we're bad or broken or fallen, or we're in the wrong place, or we're the wrong kind of person with the wrong feelings and the wrong ideas. This is, I have to say, this is not, I'm not pointing fingers. This happens in here too. I wouldn't be talking about if this wasn't an issue within Buddhism generally and meditation specifically. Just change saved or cleansed or fixed for enlightened. Sorted, as my teacher James Lowe likes to say. He's very British. He says, oh yes, we have this idea we need to be sorted out. Sorted must have some really important, I heard it all over the tube when I was in London. People talk about get it sorted. It must be a very British thing. He says, this is an invitation to anxiety. even if we take it for granted that this is true, we need to fix something. We adopt a path. We adopt the journey. This eightfold path that we have in Buddhism. This idea of an ongoing way of working with ourselves to improve ourselves, to cultivate positive virtues. Maybe we exercise in the secular realm. Maybe we change our wardrobe, completely change our diet, go to dance class, go to meditation class. All and any of these endeavors can be fun and rewarding and skillful. But sometimes the endeavors themselves, the ways in which we pursue them, and the underlying drive to pursue them, even the worldview that takes for granted their absolute necessity, is coming from an anxious patterning of heart and mind. This taking the bait of, I need to change myself. I need to change who I am. I need to be better, get fixed. When we identify with and cling to these thoughts, ideas, and stories about ourselves, we get all filled up with these conceptual thinkings, with these structures, and we turn ourselves into a problem to be fixed. You are not a problem to be fixed. If no one has told you that today, you are not a project, you're not a chore, or a problem to be fixed. You are the most secret and sacred of mysteries in the universe. You are this unfathomable, ungraspable patterning of cosmic energy in a field of cosmic energy. Every breath that you take is the fruit of the very forces in the universe that cause the stars and planets to wheel about and spin. But we so easily forget that. We take the bait of the self-improvement scheme. We get on the cushion, and we already have a framework, a format of, I know that these feelings and experiences are bad, and I want to instead have these feelings and experiences. And right there, we've taken the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. If we spend all of our time in practice trying to manipulate the patterns of energy happening within our heart and mind, without understanding the ground of the awareness in which it's all happening, we've actually missed the entire point. We will miss touching deeply, entering into, noticing, being present for our true nature, which according to the Dharma is this vast luminous awareness, this Buddha mind, wherein all of this busyness and structuring and patterning is already taking place without being touched by it in any way. In my notes I had a pen to make a point. I don't have a pen. I have a stick now. See this stick? When I take my hand and pick up the stick, I can do many things with it. I can point at someone. I can ring the bell. I can twirl it about. I can hammer in a nail. Don't watch William. I can do any number of things with it. There's so much power in the coming together of my hand and this stick. But look what happened. There's been a trade-off. A deal has been made. My hand has taken up the stick and the stick has taken up my hand. My hand has now conformed to the shape and energy and pattern of this stick. My hand is defined by this stick. The vast potential and freedom that's always available to my hand has been profoundly diminished, which isn't a problem when I need to hit the bell. but is a real problem even 2 seconds later, 10 seconds later, 20 years later. It's easy to imagine some unforeseen event, some unfortunate thing happens in our life. I mean, everyone within the sound of my voice has had some unforeseen tragedy, some heartbreak, some hard thing, some obstacle in your life. I know it's been the case in my life. Depending on the gravity and specific nature of the event, we can imagine profound consequences to our experience. We can easily imagine it becoming, for a time, the central and seemingly defining event in our whole lives after that point. It's perfectly natural that in the beginning, while this event is in the foreground, for a time we take on this identity. We are the injured one, the heartbroken one, the disappointed one, the suffering one, whatever. But as time goes on, if we allow it, owing to the nature of our infinitely hospitable heart-mind, this awareness of ours that is infinitely spacious, eventually, over time, this tragedy, this event, no matter how terrible, is integrated into the fullness of how we are, moment by moment. Reflect, if you will, how many times something has happened to you, good or bad. Something profoundly wonderful, something profoundly terrible. And now look at you. You're not defined by any of it. You are impossible to pin down, to define like that. Any single data point is just a data point in your vast, luminous, infinitely hospitable awareness. The ancients very often compared the mind to a mirror. And they would give this example. If you put a horrible image in front of a mirror, it displays the horrible image in perfect fidelity, exactly as it is, totally faithfully. And then you take away the horrible image and you put something beautiful in front of it. It displays the beautiful image, again, in perfect faithfulness. Did you have to scrub and clean the mirror to get rid of the horrible image? No. It's the very nature of the clarity of the mirror that it faithfully reflects whatever is arising. This is how you are. This is how your mind is. It is only when we hang on and cling. And of course there's a spectrum. You know, this morning when I went to go get my hair cut and the barbershop was closed, I was very upset for 5 seconds. And I just drove to the next barbershop, which was also closed. A little bit more. But it was easy enough just to carry on with my day, and then I had a fun story to tell my wife. So yes, disappointing, not earth-shaking. But even with that small example, the function is the same. A non-preferred event arises. It arises and passes, just like everything else. It's my clinging to it, chewing on it, my activation that decides how long it will last, or even just how long this activation will last. And of course, with more profound upsets or reversals, more time might be needed. But your mind is this mirror. And the same goes for our motivation to practice the Dharma and the way we practice it. This way of looking at the world that I was talking about previously, of needing to be fixed, or you can very imagine a Buddhist practitioner's worldview. life, I'm full of suffering, and I'm in a mess, and death is coming, and maybe I'll get enlightened, but then again, maybe I won't, and I need to practice very diligently and very arduously. I've just turned enlightenment into a whole problem again. I started with a problem, now I just made another one. Not necessary. The identification of the striver, of the overachiever, of the arduous, diligent practitioner is just an identity that I'm making up. And it actually can very often be counterproductive to the whole project. Venerable Ajahn Chah says, do not try to become anything. Do not make yourself into anything. Do not be a meditator. Do not become enlightened. When you sit, let it be. When you walk, let it be. Grasp at nothing. Resist nothing. Of course, there are dozens of meditation techniques, but it all comes back to this. Simply let go.